Hello everybody, what is up, and welcome back to Learning the Powder Keg 1914. So in this video we'll be going over the concept of maritime movement. Now, in the Powder Keg 1914 you can move units overseas via transport, as in other large-scale war games similar to this, but in this game there is the concept of maritime movement. Now, this represents ships, not only warships, but also vast quantities of merchant ships that were available at the time to transport men and material to the front lines. Now, in this game, they are represented without warships, but through ports. Now, how to conduct maritime movement. It is only done as a non-combat operation, so you cannot use maritime movement to send troops into enemy territories containing ports. Only to your own ports or friendly ports. It is also conducted on your turn alone, which means that those ports can be used again on other players' turns. So, in the rules it states that minor ports have the ability to receive and send one unit, and major ports and shipyards, which are pretty much the same other than one builds ships, one doesn't, have the ability to send and receive 2 units total. So, in this case, we will be saying that it is the British player's turn, and you can see here that we have the British Isles and Canada, and we have a couple Canadian troops that want to make their way over to Britain. So, during the British player's turn, on their operations phase, now they can be conducting combat operations as well, they have the ability to conduct maritime movement. So, that is done through simply declaring the units and moving them. So, these units here in Maurice, which is a fortified zone with a major port, is touching Sea Zone A3. Now, major ports, as I've said, have the ability to send and receive 2 units. So, those 2 units can embark that port, travel across the closest or the shortest route to their port their destination. So in this case, they want to be sent here to Yorkshire, and Yorkshire does have a major shipyard, and the shortest possible route they can take is 1, 2, 3 across the Atlantic and be delivered here to Yorkshire. Now, the British could not say send this artillery up to Yorkshire, of course, because that port is now full. It has received 2 units. And same with Maurice over here, which has now sent 2 units, so it cannot receive anything or send anything else during the British player's turn. The units that just used maritime movement cannot move anymore and are now stuck there. So maritime movement can be interdicted, and for that instance, let's say that a German cruiser on the German turn moves up from the Caribbean up to Sea Zone A33, which is now blocking that shortest route. And in this case, this British artillery right here wants to be sent from the minor port here in Cornwall over to a port, we'll say in Quebec here. There's a minor port here. So in this case, the British player knows that 1, 2, 3, that is the shortest possible route it can take. It cannot say take another route that is free of enemy warships. It always has to take that short route. And in this case, it would then be interdicted by a enemy warship, and this is called a blockade run that would now have to be conducted. In this case, each unit, or each side rolls a die, so the British player would roll a die for their unit trying to cross, and they got a 4, and then the Germans would roll. They got a 2. So, in this case, the British player wins that die roll and wins the blockade run, and their artillery gets to move on to Quebec. In the event that the German ship or the warship had succeeded in its role, the blockade would have been successful and the British unit would have been destroyed. Now, it is important to note too that you can only blockade enemy maritime movement. You cannot search and seize it, which I will be going over in later episodes. So in this case though, the British artillery succeeds in passing that German warship and can land safely in Quebec. Now, maritime movement also works throughout different types of border regions, so you can see here that there is a canal here, and in this case, if the British had wanted to send that artillery to the Georgian Bay, they could. They could basically just send it overseas through that canal and then into the sea zone of the Great Lake, which is L3, and then into the Georgian Bay. If one of those sides of the canal had been contested, it would have been a contested canal, and that unit would not be able to be sent through. Another thing to note is that maritime movement can never cross enemy barrage borders, and those are basically mined borders. There is no interdiction role, there is no mining role, you simply cannot pass through. So that pretty much goes over everything that has to do with maritime movement, except for one last thing, which is that maritime movement cannot be used in territories just captured on your turn. So that is everything I wanted to tell you about maritime movement. Stay tuned for the next video. Cobra, out.